Hey, we are getting into the holiday season, and so I thought I would take a moment to give you a little behind the scenes or like a little tutorial of my Plymouth virtual field trip. And you could use this leading up to Thanksgiving, but of course you could use this any time of year. So this virtual field trip is set up like all of my trips. Everything is in Google Slides with clickable links to Google Earth, so you'll want to make sure that you have access to Google Earth. This is different than Google Maps. It's Google Earth, so sometimes the school might block that, so you want to double check. But this has questions built in. These are editable, so if you want to change some of the questions, you can. But I start this off by really asking students what they already know, and then what are they wondering? What are they hoping to learn? And then from here, the beginning focus is on the indigenous people. And I did this intentionally because I think a lot of times when we think about Plymouth, we think about the Europeans, we think about the colonists and, this Thanksgiving story. But I really want to focus on the indigenous peoples, the peoples that have lived on the land since time immemorial. And so this here, if you click this link, it will take you right to Google Earth to a reconstructed home, and you can pan around. I'm using my mouse to do this, but if your students don't have a mouse, they can use their keyboard arrows. And if you are using a tablet, you can also zoom in, so you can kind of get a sense of what it is that you're looking at. So that's just one of the links that is in this virtual field trip, and it's all set up and ready for you. I have an opportunity for your students to take a look at the native lands using, this is a map here from native-lands.ca, which is an amazing interactive map if you haven't taken a look at that. But this is one I just pulled, so you can take a look at the number of different people groups right here in this region. And I've got some questions and then an opportunity for your students to acknowledge the native lands on which they live. And then there's some little videos in here as well. And this is the WAMPANOAG way, this little video. You want to make sure you have access to YouTube as well. So then there's some questions about the video. And I really want to focus on not so much as comprehension questions, but historical thinking. So a lot of the questions that you'll see throughout this trip ask students to think about what they learned, maybe how that information challenged or supported their prior knowledge. Especially if you're working with older kids, they may have some misconceptions, and so this is a great way to address those. And then from here, we have a little bit of info on the Mayflower. There is a replica here. Let me show you. So this is the replica that they can tour. And these little arrows, if they click on these, it will allow them to move around this replica. You can actually, this is so amazing. The technology is pretty incredible, so you can see here. And again, like this just really brings history to life for our students in a way that is different than just reading from a textbook. So this is all pretty incredible. So a lot of times teachers will ask me, how much time does this trip normally take? And it really depends on how you decide to do this. If you do it whole group, like what I'm doing, I'm sharing this with you and I'm serving as the tour guide, you could do this in one class period. But if you want your students to have time to explore and really take ownership in their learning, then you might find that there are some students that love this spending time on Google Earth. And so you might have students that spend a little more time than maybe what you expect. And I think that's great because that's really what makes the biggest impact, is when our students can take that ownership and they see value in the learning. Again, there's some other videos here and questions that go along with that. And there's some other little places. I've got the homes. So if you were to go to what is Plymouth Colony, it's actually like a reconstruction. And so you can actually pan around. Again, you could use these arrows. The technology today is, I think we can go in here. Let's see. Oh, we can go in. How amazing is that? Isn't this just so cool? I love this. It gives you just such an interesting perspective. And then going into some of the other things that are important as far as the first winter, and then looking at Samoset and what we often call Squanto, and there's little videos here. And putting some of those things into perspective, here your students can actually visit this sacred site. And one of the things I have in here are questions about why what we would call Profile Rock has been closed off to the public. And it's been closed off to the public because of repeated vandalism. And so there's a question about that to really ask, again, that comes back to that value and the connections to our own lives. So as you can see here, this is now unfortunately closed to the public. So again, you have that opportunity to really make those today connections to today. Also a look at marriage and family and wealth and status and how that played a role in the colony. And then there are, of course, the economic and human impacts that we often overlook. For example, cattle was an important source of wealth for the economy. And that also had some implications because of the disease that brought over. And so, again, this goes into just some of those things we often overlook. And then, of course, there's the Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving isn't always seen as a celebration. For many natives, it is seen as a time of mourning. And so there's a little video here that kind of goes over that. And then there's, of course, reflection questions. So that kind of gives you an idea of what all is included in this trip. I tried to make it well-rounded, bring in different perspectives that your students might not know, and just to, rather than only or mostly centering the colonists, really also bringing in that perspective from the indigenous people of the land. And so if you're interested in checking this out, you can find it on my website at strategiceducationalservices.com, or if you already have a TPT account, you can find it over there as well. My shop name is Michelle McDonald.